some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. Bullshit. They are not owed that.
Literally no one in any position of power is talking about reparations, but Tommy Tuberville, a senator running for re-election, of course, decided to bring up crime and talk of reparations. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Now, the rant was in response to nothing, zero. Tuberville was just fear-mongering. Again, the Democratic Party has not even taken a stance as a party on reparations for Black Americans to compensate for, years of unpaid slave labor. But nonetheless, let's hear a little more from Tuberville, who is doing exactly what politicians have been doing in this country for decades. Deflect from all of their disgusting failure on economic issues and the fact that they love to funnel taxpayer money to wealthy corporations by focusing on sowing hatred among the electorate. Let's watch.
Joe Biden has put double the amount of people on food stamps since he's been in office. He's doubled the amount. I want you to think about that. Double the amount of people that's on food stamps. We can't, first of all, you can't afford it. And our country can't afford it. We're $31 trillion in debt. All these little things add up, but they continue want to give money out. People need to go back to work.
Cenk, just take over. Yeah. I'm so sick of these people.
Okay, so let me just dismiss that whole fear-mongering he does against poor people, middle-class people. So the most amount of money that the American government gives is in subsidies to giant corporations, oil corporations. Defense contractors get the most amount of money. The drug companies say we can't even negotiate drug prices. They all make billions and billions off of us because of criminals like Tuberville, who let them take all of the taxpayer money and then blame poor people who get a fraction of that money, okay? So that's kind of disgusting pig Tuberville.
Yeah, and the highest percentage of welfare recipients happen to live in red states. Let's keep it real. Nonetheless, continue, Cenk.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're a Black player who played for Tuberville, so now you know who he was. He was racist throughout, and you should call him out. I can't. People like Tommy Tuberville. How are you involved in the game of football where there are so many people from different backgrounds, and you learn nothing from it, and you walk out with the same racist that you were when you walked in? I find that stunning. So you hated all the Black players that played for you and thought they were all criminals, you piece of crap racist. So now let's go to that. Wait, what does reparations have to do with crime? So the only reason you're bringing up reparations is because you're saying all the criminals are Black. You're the worst person. All right, and then secondly, is there a single person, forget reparations as a policy. Some people advocated, does it have any chance of passing? Is there even a bill? No, okay? But okay, that some people believe in that policy, that's fine, no problem, right? Has anyone ever connected reparations to, why don't we just let the criminals go and that'll be a form of a reparation because they could just keep the money? Of course not, not one human being has ever suggested that until Tuberville just said it. That's not a thing. You could disagree about different policies in regard to crime. That's an interesting conversation. But connecting it purely to Black people and saying that it's reparations, well, it's flat out in the open racism. They're out of the hate closet. So now they're just being fabulous all around the country, telling you how racist they are. So look.
That's all they have. That's all they can sell to their voters. And I wish their voters were privy to that.
Yeah.
That the hatred in the rhetoric and in the campaigning does absolutely nothing to actually better their lives. And that it is in fact a very intentional distraction from the fact that these lawmakers are robbing you to give to the wealthy. There has been a redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the top in this country for decades. And it's because of lawmakers like Tuberville who engage in that, because of course they're gonna work on behalf of their corporate donors. You think Tuberville actually cares about its constituents? Doesn't care about them at all. But that hatred, man, it grabs people's attention. That's what they focus on. And also, let's keep in mind, Tuberville and right-wingers like him provide a scapegoat for whatever pain and suffering their constituents are experiencing as a result of those economic policies that have been implemented by people like Tuberville.
Yeah.
But we don't have a media, we don't have media that explains these things. And instead they play into these narratives.
Bingo, so that's exactly what I was gonna say. I actually wrote about this in my book. I'm mad at the media because when we came to this country, I was a Republican. Well, I wouldn't have been a Republican if they had clearly explained what the Southern strategy was. The Southern strategy was the Republican Party deciding en masse we would like to appeal to not white voters in the South, but because there's tons of non-racist white voters in the South. There are tons of people who vote Democrat. There's tons of people who are progressive in the South. No, they decided very specifically to target white racists in the South. That's what the Southern strategy was. Well, if I'd known that, I'd never be a Republican, right? My dad would have never been a Republican. But the mainstream media lies to us and says, oh, no, it's all 50-50. So they used to use coded language, right? And honestly, as an 18-year-old, 20-year-old, I didn't know the coded language. I didn't know that they were being racist against not only black people, but also me, right? So that's why I get furious at the media that whitewashes it and calls it even. It ain't even. So finally, who does the crime? Well, let's look at it. Let's go to graphic 3. Law enforcement agencies submitted data to the UCR program through incident reports and arrest reports of 3.6 million arrestees. Of these arrestees, 31% were between 26 and 35 years of age. Wow, that is a giant number in just a small age group, right? Then by gender, 72.6% were male and 27.4% were female, so predominantly men, okay?
Young men.
Young men. By race, most arrestees, 67.7% were white. Well, then they couldn't get reparations, could they? Okay, 2/3 of the crimes are done by white people. 27.1% are black or African American, 2.9% are other races. So look, guys, so it's not that it's not disproportionate. Yes, there's a little bit more black arrestees than there are blacks in the country as a matter of percentages, right? By the way, does that happen in every country? Yes. Is it about black people? No. In every country, the poorest demographics unfortunately have higher crime rates because it's because of a lack of opportunity. In the other countries, it's completely different races. In this country, we robbed African Americans of economic opportunity for hundreds of years, so they are more heavily represented in that demographic, which then leads to being a little bit more heavily represented among arrestees. But Tuberville makes it sound like all the criminals are black, when in reality, 2/3 of the criminals are white. And he's talking about reparations for black people. Did he clarify that in the speech? No.
Of course
Why?
not.
Because he's a racist.
And the lies, that's not the bug, that's the feature. That's the point, right? The lies are meant to fearmonger, sow division and hatred among the electorate. That is how he maintains power. It's done on purpose.
And look, honestly, the crowd loves it. That's why he says it, right? If the crowd didn't love it, he wouldn't say it. And so if you actually cared about focusing on a particular demographic that causes the most amount of crime, you would be talking about young men.
Also, I haven't seen a damn solution from the Republican Party in regard to the crime wave, not one. They love to campaign about the crime wave. They love to fearmonger about it. Have you seen a single solution? Not one, not one.
Yeah, and so finally, just picture a politician like Tuberville saying, you know, the real problem with crime is young men. We gotta put them away. What do you think the crowd reaction would be? Filled with young men, they would be like, wait.
Maybe.
Wait.
No, I'm just kidding.
So look, that wouldn't make sense either, of course. But they're trying to misdirect you for the purpose of hate. It's not officially out of the closet, and there isn't a single Republican condemning Tommy Tuberville. It's not even a question. They're not condemning him. In fact, when they have the other Republicans on air and they ask them about it, they're like, well, you know, I'd be more polite. Not, I would think differently. Don Bacon from Nebraska said that on air. I'd be more polite. No, he thinks the same thing.
100%.
He's just like, oh, I'd go old school and I use coded language.
Totally.
But still my audience and my voters would get it. I'm still racist just like them, so come vote for me. And that's been the response across the board to any Republican that's been asked, and any Republican who hasn't been asked, of course, hasn't said a word about it, because they love that racism. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.